First things first, formally as well as more importantly, with directness, I shall tell you that shit, piss, fuck, cunt, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. Those were the 7 words you can't say on television, as also once, well, not portrayed, but rather presented by George Carlin, one of his comedic programs, I believe, much to the dismay of, I think, the television executives. And that is something that I want to talk about because, boy oh boy, of all the things that Star Trek fans could have complained about regarding the new television show Star Trek Picard, cursing. Fucking cursing is one of them. And of course, it's probably mostly Americans who do that because they grew up with this idea that has been implemented into their brains that it is even more of a shit show to curse rather than to, comparing cursing to violence doesn't even make sense because violence is okay, but cursing is not. Whole movies have gained rating systems, or have rather gained ratings that do not fit those movies purely because somebody cursed in those films. That doesn't make any fucking sense. Cursing is one of the most harmless things you can do, and one of the most natural things that are part of the human speech as such. It is inherent in our very nature to curse. It helps us perform better to a degree, according to some studies. But most importantly, it helps us let out anger without having to physically manifest that anger. We don't have to punch someone to death. We can just call them a motherfucking bastard. And that shall suffice. And because it suffices, we feel a lot better about it afterwards. We've given him something without giving him to him, because legitimately, literally hurting people is always going to be worse than just insulting them. The old saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but depending on the kind of person you are and depending on whether or not you can legitimately use sound waves to kill people, which is pretty improbable, well, words will never hurt me. So why the ever-loving shit would you give 2 squirts of piss about whether or not Star Trek, now that it's no longer in the grip of the limiting US television broadcasting idiocy when it comes to the idea of words being used or not being used, why should it matter to you this much that all of a sudden people talk like normal people and use curse words all the time? That's just how people talk. And I highly fucking doubt that they're going to stop doing that in the future just because we become more advanced doesn't mean we don't need, or we rather let go of the need of having words which helps us let go of an inner, brought up feeling of anger. And manifesting this into words rather than action is always better. And it makes us feel better. And this is the most human thing of them all. I believe this should be part of Star Trek. It should make it seem more natural to a degree. Because PG-13 kinda mentalities do not suit anything well that is even remotely supposed to be like reality. Because this is not like reality. In reality, everybody curses, and then in those PG-13 instances, you can curse once, like legitimately curse, not dang or dagnabbit or all that shit, which just, it makes me cringe every time I hear it. It seems so disingenuous. It seems like you are hiding something. It seems like you might as well just ram a bloody knife into my back any second now because you're harboring all this pent-up anger and you're not letting it out appropriately. You're rather content with the idea of using non-curse words, which, no, fuck you. Just curse like a normal person. Be normal, for God's sake. The kind of shit that the US has been doing throughout, I don't know, must have been since the coding years, and the coding years were amazingly awful. The Hays Code. Was it Hays Code? Yeah, I believe the Hays Code. When it was basically determined that you couldn't have curse words, you couldn't display criminals, although the word criminal itself is a bit of a subjective word because one man's criminal is another man's hero, specifically if you talk about things like rebels and terrorists. But anyway, you couldn't portray criminals as the good guys. What do we got here? Yeah, that's a good example. Alcohol consumption on camera was discouraged. I should actually get myself some tonic water for that. Anyhow, LGBTQ, or whatever they were called back then, positive portrayal of those kind of individuals was also highly discouraged, and all that shit. Basically, to create some sort of false moral narrative that never existed. Humanity doesn't work like that. And what you perceive as being the moral way of being is, once again, 100% subjective. People say killing can't be moral, but there's something like the death sentence as well as killing in self-defense. So obviously there's a moral example of this. Just like cursing, it's just profane, it's just vulgar. It is profane and vulgar if you do it every fucking second of your life. If you build your entire identity around it, yes, then it's unnecessary and then it's completely pointless. But if you do it like any other normal human being would do it, in moments of anger, you burst out and maybe say fuck 20,000 times because you just can't keep it inside. That's perfectly reasonable, and it's also perfectly reasonable to be displayed on a, well, in this case, not really television screen, but I guess television screen, because most people also nowadays watch on television screens, even though they're watching a streaming service. Anyhow, it's just natural. Like, and unless you're doing something like South Park with the shit episode, where they counted down like to 255 times they said shit in this episode, but that was to make a point. Star Trek Picard, that's why hasn't really reached some sort of event horizon of curse word mayhem. It's been pretty tame. And for example, the main example that everybody brings up, the Admiral, who goes like, pure fucking hubris. I felt that. That felt logical. I mean, more emotionally logical, because emotions have a certain logic to them, and people express their emotions sometimes without using cuss words, sometimes while using them. And for someone like, for example, Lieutenant Commander? I think Lieutenant Commander Worf in the original The Next Generation series, this is the perfect character to give curse words to, but he didn't get any, and I made him feel also a bit meh. I mean, besides the fact that he got phasered down or beat up every single episode to show that situation is dire because our most strongest character is getting beat up. Oh, wait a second, he's getting beaten up all the time, so that's completely pointless. Also, and another thing that I just want to talk about, since we've just finished the first season of Star Trek Picard, yes, horrible show according to so many people, so much consistency and lore just flushed out the window, and just like lore was flushed out the Enterprise during the episode Brothers? Was it Brothers? The one with the ginormous space Christmas tree of icicles. And the point is, you say that now, but let's just travel back in time to the amazing year of 1980. 7, I'm not 100% sure when The Next Generation started, or rather when the first season was finished. I believe it must have been 1988. And let's just look at all these critics who are just praising The Next Generation because it was actually not being praised. Hold a second. People were really unsure what to make of this, because it came after a show that had been cancelled at this time for not quite 30 years yet. Even 20 years, I was saying. 60, 70, 80, okay, 20 years. So something along the lines of, over a decade had passed, almost 2 decades had passed since the original series was cancelled, and people were very distrustful towards The Next Generation during its first 3 seasons. Granted, one could say during this 3rd season we finally got the show that everybody is now praising in retrospect. But you do realise the first 2 seasons were like 80% garbage. Do you honestly think that the first season of Star Trek Picard was going to be this perfect golden chalice of perfect combination of storytelling? Every character gets perfectly developed. No, because they aren't quite sure what to do just yet. They're trying to use nostalgia as a bit of a backup plan, but at the same time try to create new characters, which is a bit hard to do. You need to balance that shit out. And Star Trek: The Next Generation is one of those shows that had to learn to do exactly that for 2 years. Mind you, a show with this big a budget as Star Trek: The Next Generation, relatively speaking, could have been cancelled right after the first season. And but it was given a chance. All that I'm trying to say here is, give Star Trek Picard a chance. With Discovery, I'm a bit on the side of, it's sort of the Voyager of its type. It's very action-oriented, trying to be sexy, but kind of maybe overdoing it a bit. Whatever. Okay, we will see, but Star Trek Picard thus far has shown that it can be very contemplative. Wait, how do you pronounce that? I'm excused for any pronunciation mistakes since I'm German. So, contemplative. It is very subtle in its progress to a degree that it became kind of boring during the first 3 episodes. But in the end, I believe that it set up something that I found to be one of the most beautiful season finales in all of Star Trek history. And even though I have to admit, yes, Commander Riker's dumbass fleet-leading diplomacy work was a bit underwhelming to say the least, because that was like a kindergartner taunting another one on the playground for whatever bloody reason. I have no clue who wrote Riker's dialogue in this case. That was really not needed, because here's the thing. Any other character in the show basically has an excuse to just be as unprofessional as they want to be, because Picard is no longer like doing things Starfleet like. He doesn't have a fleet at his command. He has one ship sort of at his command. The captain of that ship has his own mental issues, and every other character on that ship is his own or her own individual, not part of Starfleet. They don't need to be diplomatic. They have to, they try their best, obviously, but they don't need to be professional. Riker, on the other hand, Riker is a fucking acting captain. Like, I could have sworn he should have been Admiral by now, whatever. Perhaps that is once again the Psycho Janeway doing her job. I'm leaving a link in the description to explain what I'm referring to when I say Psycho Janeway. Which, by the way, did you know that so many Star Trek fans hated Voyager when it first hit? And look, I'm not even gonna talk the favour of the heart that apparently no bloody Star Trek fan had back in the 2000s. Even though I fucking love that show. I loved it when it first came out. Granted, I was like, wait, hold a second, we were released like in 2003, I believe, or 2002 in Germany, so I must have been like 6, 7 years old. So, a bit of an excuse, but at the same time, I also grew up with reruns of The Next Generation, so I had something to compare it to. But Star Trek Enterprise, I'm getting derailed again, so never mind. The point that I'm trying to make is, give Star Trek Picard a chance, because it has proven to be a very interesting story, a very character investigative story, one could say. And I'm pretty sure that the criticism that was now thrown at this first season is going to be acknowledged. Whether that's a good thing depends, because specifically that cursing thing is just, I mean, grow up, grow the fuck up. Cursing is part of life. Cursing should be part of movies. You pump up your age rating appropriately if it is about violence. Violence should be the marker. If someone gets violently torn to shreds, then guess what? You should probably X-rate that movie. If it's like torture or something being displayed, yes, that means the rating needs to go up quite a few marks, like if it's like the faces of death or something like that, I completely understand if you give this an R rating. If you have a literal video of someone, but basically if you have a snuff film, then this is X rated without a doubt. Honestly, I'm not quite sure if there's a difference between X and R rating. I'm not an expert on I'm not an expert on the American rating system, but I know that X and R are basically sort of like adult-centered ratings, and there's also the MA rating, but I'm not sure if that's just for Canada, so whatever. But Canada and America is basically the same country, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah, so let Star Trek just be profane, if you want to call it profane. But if you don't want, you can just be like King Henry the sixth, fifth. God damn it, I don't remember. The guy from the bells that chimes at midnight, and just be like, this is Star Trek in this case, and you're going to be like, I know thee not, old man. How white hair? Oh wait, because bald. How no hair can become a jester and fool. I once dreamt of such a television show about an old man, but now, having awoken, I scorn my dreams. See you around.